The 2025 New York City mayoral race has morphed from a local contest into a national spectacle. Scandals, lawsuits, and unexpected alliances have captured headlines, turning this campaign into a referendum on corruption, social justice, and the future of urban governance. With early voting opening October 25th and running through November 2nd, New Yorkers will have 9 days to choose a leader before the November 4th general election. This race, once crowded, now focuses on three polarizing contenders after incumbent Mayor Eric Adams withdrew on September 28th. Zohran Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo, and Sliwa each offer starkly different visions, and each carry baggage that has made this campaign one of the most dramatic in the city's history. Zohran Mamdani, a 33-year-old Queens assemblyman and a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, has turned the race on its head, running on promises of free buses, rent rollbacks, municipal grocery stores, and expanded public housing. He casts himself as a champion for the tenants, transit riders, and working families. Mamdani has expanded his platform to include universal daycare and municipal-run grocery stores to combat food deserts, arguing that essential services like childcare and fresh food should not be dependent on a family's zip code. He notes that free bus services would put money back into pockets of low-income workers who shouldn't have to pay to go to work, and links affordable housing to broader efforts to curb gentrification and displacement. Progressive elected officials and activists across the country have hailed his primary victory as evidence that bold ideas can win in America's largest cities. In June, he shocked observers by defeating former Governor Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary, a victory that signaled a generational shift in city's politics. After his win, the Working Families Party endorsed him, and the national DSA mobilized in support. His agenda resonates with younger voters and has propelled him onto a commanding lead in the polls. Aggregated surveys show Mamdani with about 44.5% support, ahead of Cuomo's 26% and Sliwa's 12%. Mamdani's rise has triggered an intense backlash. After he became the presumptive nominee, Republican politicians and far-right activists mounted a barrage of Islamophobic and xenophobic attacks, linking his candidacy to 9/11 and sharing images of the Statue of Liberty in a burqa. Even Democratic Senator Kristen Gillibrand briefly repeated unsubstantiated claims about Mamdani's alleged support for the global jihad before apologizing. In July, the New York Times reported that Mamdani's 2009 college application listed him as both Asian and Black or African American. Mamdani explained that as an Indian Ugandan, he checked both boxes to reflect his heritage. Critics accuse him of misrepresentation. Supporters argue the controversy highlights the inadequacy of race categories. Despite these attacks, the Council on American-Islamic Relations noted that anti-Muslim rhetoric has only galvanized supporters. Mamdani frames the opposition he faces as evidence that entrenched interests fear genuine change. Reports that Andrew Cuomo spoke with President Donald Trump about coalescing anti-Mamdani forces prompted him to denounce such talks as betrayal of the Democratic voters. He points to Trump's threats to deport him or place the city under federal control as proof that national elites will go to extraordinary lengths to stop a socialist mayor. His campaign relies on door-to-door organizing, small donations, and endorsements from progressive lawmakers. With a double-digit polling lead and an energized base, he enters the final weeks as a favorite. But he must convert this enthusiasm into votes in a ranked choice voting system that rewards broad appeal. 4 years after resigning as governor aimed essay allegations, Andrew Cuomo is attempting a political comeback. Framing himself as a seasoned crisis manager, Cuomo entered the Democratic primary and after losing to Mamdani refused to bow out. He created the Fight and Deliver Party and launched an independent campaign in mid-July. Backed by real estate and business interests, Cuomo argues that his experience is needed to steer the city through financial challenges and rising crime. He promises to hire more police, cut red tape, and rebuild relationships with business leaders. Polls put him in second place with about a quarter of the vote. Cuomo pitches himself as a pragmatic alternative to both Mamdani and Sliwa. He claims that Mamdani's free bus proposal is a fantasy that would cost $900 million instead of the proposed $180 million subsidy funded by higher property taxes. He argues that socialism has never worked anywhere and pledges to expand charter schools and public-private partnerships. Cuomo often reminds voters of his 3 terms as governor, pointing to his management of the COVID-19 pandemic and large infrastructure projects like the Tappan Zee Bridge replacement as evidence of his administrative skill. He positions himself as the adult in the room, someone who understands budgets and can deliver results, and appeals to most Democrats and independents who are wary of both socialists and law and order conservatives. In August, the New York Times revealed Cuomo spoke with Donald Trump shortly after the president met with GOP leaders about defeating Mamdani. The Cuomo camp initially claimed the call did not include politics, then they denied it even occurred. Mamdani blasted the conversation as evidence that Cuomo would ally with anyone, even Trump, to block a socialist. Cuomo's tactics have backfired. He falsely claimed Mamdani lives in a rent-controlled apartment, suggesting the assemblyman was depriving a low-income family of housing. Mamdani countered that his unit was rent-stabilized and that he qualified when his income was low. He plans to move when feasible. Housing experts dismiss Cuomo's proposal to means test rent-stabilized units as ill-informed. While Cuomo retains loyal supporters, particularly older voters who recall his pandemic leadership, he remains a polarizing figure. Women's rights groups continue to protest his candidacy, highlighting the allegations that forced his resignation. As the campaign narrows, Cuomo must persuade skeptical Democrats and independents that he offers stability without the baggage of the past. Sliwa, the founder of the Guardian Angels vigilante group, re-entered politics as the Republican nominee with a fresh image. Famous for patrolling subways in his red beret, Sliwa this year created the Protect Animals ballot line and made animal rights a core issue. He accuses the city's animal care centers of mistreating pets and promises no-kill shelters. By championing shelter reforms, he attracts voters beyond the traditional GOP base and casts himself as a protector of the vulnerable. Sliwa also emphasized public safety and law and order credentials drawn from his decades' work with the Guardian Angels. He pledges to recruit more police officers, crack down on quality-of-life crimes, and restore safety to the subways. The one-time vigilante lost to Eric Adams in 2021, but insists that voters now want a fighter who will stand up to both crime and corruption. His brand of street politics includes high-profile demonstrations, and he frames his activism as a defense of working-class neighborhoods struggling with migrant shelters and rising rents. In a city where Donald Trump is deeply unpopular, Sliwa brands himself as an anti-Trump Republican. After Trump praised Adams and threatened to deport Mamdani, Sliwa publicly told the president to stay out of New York politics. He ditched his iconic red beret to avoid distraction and signal a break with his vigilante past, as he courted labor unions and positioned himself as a pro-worker and anti-fat cat. Aiming to capture blue-collar voters uneasy with both a socialist and a career politician, his street theater tactics keep him in the news and energize a loyal base even as polls show him trailing. Although he has exited the race, Eric Adams still influences the contest. In late 2024, he became the first sitting mayor to be indicted on federal bribery charges and fraud charges. He declared his innocence and in April 2025 abandoned the Democratic primary to run as an independent on the Safe and Affordable line. Days later, Adams withdrew his candidacy on September 28th. Even after his exit, Adams faces lawsuits. 4 former NYPD officials sued him and top police commanders, alleging he enabled corruption and retaliated against whistleblowers. In July, the Trump Justice Department suddenly dropped all charges, and Trump publicly boasted that he had helped out Adams. In September, the New York Times reported that Adams met with Trump's advisor Steve Witkoff to discuss resigning in exchange for an ambassadorial post. Days later, Adams withdrew his candidacy on September 28th. His name remains on the ballot, but he has not endorsed his successor. As of October 20th, 2025, Mamdani is leading the polls with about 43%. Cuomo is in second with about 29%. Sliwa is holding in third at about 19.5%. New York City uses ranked choice voting. If no one earns more than 50% of first choice votes, the last place candidate is eliminated and their votes are redistributed based on second choices. With Adams off the campaign trail and attorney Jim Walland withdrawing on the 2nd of September, the distribution of Sliwa and Cuomo's second preferences could determine whether Mamdani's lead holds or narrows in later counting rounds. Early voting begins October 25th, giving voters 9 days to cast ballots ahead of the general election. Observers will watch how turnout differs from past cycles, particularly among young and immigrant voters energized by Mamdani's candidacy, and among older voters worried of radical change. Outside forces could still shape the race. Continued smears against Mamdani's faith could galvanize Muslim voters. Endorsements for Cuomo might bolster his comeback narrative, and worsening public disorder or migrant shelters could fuel Sliwa's populist appeal. Ranked choice dynamics mean second preferences will be decisive if no one wins a majority outright. The 2025 mayoral contest pits a socialist reformer against a scandal-scarred ex-governor and a law and order populist. Zohran Mamdani offers a vision of public ownership and tenant power. Andrew Cuomo promises steady hands and a moderate governance, and Curtis Sliwa channels frustration into protests and animal rights advocacy while emphasizing public safety. Eric Adams, once a heavyweight, exits under a cloud of allegations. As early voting approaches and national figures weigh in, New Yorkers face a stark choice: continue on a path towards a more egalitarian city, re-embrace a seasoned but controversial operator, or bet on the outsider who pledges to protect animals and neighborhoods alike. The outcome will reverberate far beyond New York, offering lessons about the future of urban politics and demonstrating how local elections are increasingly shaped by national forces. This is Global Election Wire, where we make elections make sense.